Welcome back. This is part 2 of 3.3. So it is possible that method 2 can be streamlined a bit by using the following formula. So method 3, the derivative of an inverse function, let f be a function that is differentiable on an interval I if f has an inverse function f inverse, and then f inverse is differentiable at any x for which f prime of f inverse of x does not equal 0. Moreover, f inverse prime of x is equal to 1 over f prime of f inverse of x. So pretty much what you guys just did in the previous two examples can be summed up into this right here, right? So it makes it a lot quicker. So f inverse prime of x equals 1 over f prime of f inverse of x. All right, so we pretty much want to find, we know what f of x is, which is x plus sine of x, right? F prime of x would be just equal to 1 plus cosine of x. And now we want to figure out, right, the inverse function, right, would be just of the original one, right? So you always want to exchange x and y here. So that's going to give us x equals y plus sine of y. And then they're telling us x equals pi. So we want to figure out now, what is the y value when x equals pi? So pi equals to y plus sine of y. All right. And again, you can always use a calculator to figure this out. So the only time that this is equal to pi is when sine of y is equal to 0. So y has to be equal to pi. All right. So we're going to do this now. We're going to find the substitution, and then we're going to figure out what it is. So using the formula f inverse prime of pi, right, equals 1 over f prime at pi. So 1 over f prime, which is 1 plus cosine of x at x equals pi. And that's going to give us pretty much 1 over 1 plus negative 1, which is undefined. All right. So let's do this a couple more times. So find the derivative of the inverse function of f of x equals 1/4 x cubed plus x minus 1 at x equals 3 using the formula above. So again, first, if we have f of x equals 1/4 x cubed plus x minus 1, right? The inverse is going to be x equals 1/4 y cubed plus y minus 1. Now, we also want to find f prime. So f prime of x equals 3 over 4 times x squared plus 1. All right, and then using this one at x, we want to make sure, so at x equals 3. So 3 equals 1/4 y cubed plus y minus 1. So we want to find the y value when that's true. So again, just by trial and error, you can use a calculator, right? Like I showed you using Desmos. So you can say 3 equals 1/4 or x equals 3, and then you can put 1/4 y cubed plus y minus 1. And that's pretty much going to give you guys y equals 2. All right, so we know that f inverse of 3 equals positive 2. All right, so now let's apply that into the formula. So we have f inverse prime is equal to 1 over f prime, which is 3 over 4 times x squared plus 1. And then we want to find this at x equals 2. Yeah, x equals 2. All right, so you plug it in and you end up with 1/4. All right. Okay, so let's look at 6. So select the values of a strictly monotonic function g of x and its derivative g prime of x are shown on the table below. So we want to find g inverse prime of 1. So g inverse prime at 1. All right, so this is pretty much, if we're looking for the x1, is going to be 1 over, again, g prime G inverse of x, right? So let's find G inverse prime at 1. So this is going to be 1 over G prime. So G inverse at positive 1, we want to find that too. And that one's equal to G inverse at 1 is equal to positive 1 right there. Is that true? G inverse at 1. Yeah. Actually, no, my bad. So the inverse function is going to be 1 over G prime. G inverse prime at 1 is when x is equal. What is the x value when y is 1? So in this case, it happens to be negative 1. All right. So what is the x value when y is 1? That's the inverse function. Sorry, had a little brain fart right there. So that's going to be G prime at negative 1. So that's going to be equal to pretty much G prime at negative 1 is negative 1/5. So G inverse prime at 1 equals to negative 1/5. Bingo. All right. So let's look at B now. So again, G inverse prime of x is equal to 1 over G prime of G inverse of 3. All right. So G inverse of 3. Negative 3 in this case, my bad. Negative 3. So again, we want to find what's G inverse of negative 3. So when G of x is equal to negative 3, what's the x value? And if you notice, it's positive 4. So now we have G inverse prime of x equals to 1 over G prime of 4. In this case, G prime at 4 happens to be negative 2. So this is equal to 1 over negative 2, or negative 1/2.